Today is Wednesday. Yud Beis Shvat Tovshin Ein Gimel. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Aleph Tovshin Yud Beis in the Mamar Veheinif Yodo hanohor of Achron Shel Pesach Tovshin Yud Aleph, and we are on page Samach Beis 62. We are in the process of learning about Mashiach and the special quality of Mashiach, who will possess the capacity to judge by the sense of smell, through sensing, through the sense of smell, and which is connected to the very highest levels in the spheres. We're talking about the very inner dimensions of the inner aspect of Keser, Pnimius Atik. Just like the sense of smell is connected to the very essence of the soul, because it has the ability to revive the person from even a deep state of being of fainting. And the Rebbe explained that this is the idea of judging, that the Mashiach will judge, as mentioned, through the sense of smell rather than through the eyesight or through hearing the evidence, seeing the evidence or hearing the evidence. And that is not only a difference in the method by which he will obtain the evidence, but it's a fundamentally different type of judgment. Through sensing, Mashiach will have the ability to be able to, he'll have the ability to actually see the essence of the person, and through that to find reasons to justify the person and to find him innocent and zakai. And from this, the Rebbe went in chapter 4, Ois Daled, to explain the idea of the lifting of the hand on the sea when Mashiach will come, which will be split into 7 channels. And the Rebbe explained that just like before the giving of the Torah, there was the splitting of the sea, splitting of the Yam Suf, and the reason for that was that it was a preparation, a necessary step in the preparation to the giving of the Torah, rather than as a method to save the Jews or to drown the Egyptians, because in fact the Jews came up on the same side as they went in. They basically made a U-turn. They went in to the sea and then they came out on the same side. So what was the point? The idea was it was necessary for the purpose of the giving of the Torah. So too when Mashiach comes, there will be the necessity to split the sea again for the revelations that will take place when Mashiach comes. What happened before Matan Torah? What was the state of the relationship between our world, the physical world, and the spiritual worlds before the Torah was given? There was a chasm. There was a divide between the two. The splitting of the sea brought about the ability of the fusion of the two. The sea represents that which is concealed, as the Rebbe will elaborate in a moment, spiritually, right? Dry land represents that which is revealed. The splitting of the sea means the fusing of the two. And so too, when Mashiach comes, there will be tremendous revelations, even greater than there were at the time of the giving of the Torah. And therefore, there's a need also, again, for the splitting of the sea, again, the idea of fusing the two worlds which are otherwise separate. So we are on page Samach Beis, in the middle of chapter 4, and we will start with, at the full stop, 5 lines from the top. The line begins with Malchus. The hanohor, and the preparation for this, the preparation for the fusing of the two worlds, the physical and the spiritual, which took place at Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, which brought about the ability to transform, that we were able to fuse and to transform physicality into holiness. The preparation for this, al yedei inyan kriyas Yam Suf, was through the idea of splitting the sea. Shenase bekiya b'hayom, there became a split in the sea. What is the sea? Spiritually, bechinas malchus de atzilus. We're talking about the attribute, the level, the sphere of malchus in the world of atzilus, which is the idea of the last level of the higher realms, through the splitting of the sea, which means opening up Malchus of Atzilus, that brought about the fusion of Atzilus and the lower worlds, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Generally speaking, Atzilus is still in the domain of the Creator. From Bria and down is already in the domain of the created. Yeah. So through the splitting of the sea, the domain of the Creator and the domain of the created were fused, were combined, were connected. And the Rebbe over here mentions Ubazeh Gufa Yesh Beis Deis concerning the splitting of the sea, or rather, what he's saying is like this: in the fusion between the domain of the Creator, Atzilus, and the domain of the created, Bia, there are two ways to accomplish this. You can either lower the higher one to the lower one, Milmaya Lamata, or you can raise up the lower one to the higher one. So in other words, you could bring Malchus, the Atzilus, you could bring Atzilus down to Bia, you could bring heaven down to earth, or you could bring earth, you could lift Bia into Atzilus. So the Rebbe says there are two opinions actually how it happened. There's the opinion of the Zohar and the opinion of the Arizal. Ubezeh Gufa Yesh Beis Deis, and this itself there are two opinions. Ube'emes, and in the brackets the Rebbe says, and truly, and in truth, Ein Machlekes Ben Beis Deis. There is no dispute between these two opinions. Ela Shneim Emes, both are true. Sheyeshnam Shnei Inyanim, they're actually both. What both? Which both? Which two aspects? Das Arizal, there's the opinion of the Arizal. Shekriyas Yamsuf Inyanam Shachas Atzilus Libya. The opinion of the Arizal is that the splitting of the Yamsuf is the idea of drawing down Atzilus, the domain of the Creator, Libya to Bri Yetzirah Asiyah, from above to below. V'das HaZoyar, there's the opinion of the Zoyar, Shekriyas Yamsuf Inyan Halas Biyali Atzilus. And there's the opinion of the Zoyar that in fact what took place, it was the lifting of the domain of the created, Biyah, Bri Yetzirah Asiyah, Atzilus, into Atzilus. And the Rebbe says both are true, meaning to say that in order for there to be true fusion, you needed both, right? Let's go on for a moment. And we could say shehu al derech ha'hefresh ben shnei sugi avoda im elikus hu hakoil oishu hakoil hu elikus. This is the Rebbe says we could say that this is the difference between the two types of avodas Hashem, how one serves Hashem, whether with the approach from the perspective of godliness is everything, or everything is godliness. If you remember, we learned about. Let's go on for another line. As is known, this is the difference between the Magid of Mezrich and the Alter Rebbe. What does all this mean? Generally, there are, if you remember, we spoke about the two perspectives of Das Elyon and Das Tachten. When we say there is nothing besides God, right? Is there existence, but that existence is godliness? Or is there no existence at all and everything is God or godliness? Right? I know, Eddie, you had a bit of difficulty last time around with this, but this is the concept that is explained in Chassidus. There are two perspectives. The two perspectives are, the lower perspective is, there is existence, obviously. If you take a look around in the world, you see that there is existence. The world exists. But we know that Hashem Echad, there's one God, right? So how does that? How do those two notions, those two ideas coexist? So Chassidus explains that the world has no independent existence besides Hashem. So therefore, when something doesn't have independent existence, it doesn't truly exist. It doesn't exist from its own perspective, as it were. So far as it itself is concerned, it doesn't exist. Why? Because it has no independent existence. It's completely and totally dependent on the godly life force and energy that gives it life. Right? That's one perspective. So, there is mitzias, there is existence, but it's not a truly independent existence. It's godliness. So therefore, every aspect that you find in creation, all the details, the heat of fire, the coldness of water, etc., it's all godliness. Why? Because it doesn't have any independent existence. That's one perspective. Another perspective is there's no existence at all. There is only God. And everything that we find are all expressions of godliness. A person, when he looks at himself, could say, do I exist? So one perspective is, I do exist. I have hands, I have feet, I exist. God gave you a mitzvah to put tefillin on your hand. The hand that exists has a mitzvah to put on tefillin. And so on and so forth. Another perspective is there is no hand. Nothing exists. I don't exist. Hashem said, you should tie the tefillin onto your hand. The hand was created. You should wear the tefillin on your head. The head was created. Right? So there are two perspectives. Al derech zeh, there is the two perspectives, whether godliness is everything or everything is godliness. What's the starting point? Where do we start from? Is the starting point from the godliness, or is the starting point from everything? It's a subtle difference, but it's a difference nonetheless. Similarly, when we talk about the fusion between Atzilus and Biyah, the domain of the Creator and the domain of the created, the fusion of the two, what happens? Is it the Creator revealing himself to the created and overwhelming him? Here comes the Creator and you are meaningless. From your perspective, it's all God. Or is it that the created is lifted to the Creator and becomes transformed, if you will? Let's put it. Let me try to add some more language here. In Chassidus, there are two words that are used often: bittul and zichuch. Two concepts. Bittul means nullification, annulment. Zichuch means refinement. What's the difference between the two? When the sun comes and shines into a dark place, Sevet lichtig, becomes bright. What happens when the sun sets? It becomes dark again. Why? Because the sun didn't actually transform the environment in which it appeared. It overwhelmed it. It shined, and it brought light into that environment so long as it was there. But the place remained inherently dark. There was no transformation. There was the bittul of the cheshech. He pushed away the darkness, but the darkness remains. That's bittul. Zichuch means you refine. You actually transform the environment or the object with which you work. And you raise it permanently into a different state. It's like taking the darkness and transforming it into light, which is Laila Kayim Yoyer. Transforming the darkness into light. We don't have a notion of that at the moment. But that's the idea, taking something and turning it into something else. Sorry?
If you understand something, you're doing it to a certain thing, but it stays there.
It's like the difference between a Beinani and a Tzaddik. Let's put it this way. A Tzaddik has transformed his Nefesh Habamis. Right? He has transformed his animal soul. It's no longer schlepping him to do negative things. It's now only harnessed for the purposes of Kedusha because he's transformed it. A Beinani hasn't. He's constantly in that state of battle. When you say Milmayla Lamata, that means that the upper one overwhelms the lower one. It's like the difference that we learned in the previous Maimer concerning Purim, right? That Purim was a culmination of Matan Torah. Why? Because at Matan Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hashem overwhelmed them. There was tremendous revelation of godliness, but you didn't know. We didn't. You couldn't really tell if the Jews actually were transformed. God appeared at Sinai and said, "Anech Hashem Elokecha," with all His glory. How could you not be taken in by this experience? But have I really and truly received the Torah? The Torah was given, but did I receive it? Did I become a Torah Jew? Was there transformation? The acid test was on Purim, when it was dark, when there was no revelation of godliness, and the Jewish people stood with Mesiras Nefesh for the entire year. That proved that what? That they actually received the Torah. That's why Purim was the culmination of the giving of the Torah. Right? So Chassidus says, this is I believe the point that Rebbe is trying to make over here, that when Mashiach comes, now before we get into that, each one of these two perspectives has a deficiency. Why? Because when you say that, yes, it comes from above, revelation of godliness, what does that mean? It means that it's the highest levels of godliness showing themselves in the lowest levels, but the lowest levels haven't been lifted or transformed. So it hasn't permeated the environment in which it appears. The environment on its own has remained in its original state. Right? Similar to the mitzvahs that our forefathers performed before the Torah was given. There was no permanence. Why? Because there was no transformation. So yes, it's great, and it's a great, very powerful revelation, but it didn't affect transformation. So that's the deficiency in the Gilu, the revelation from above. The quality that it possesses is that it's a great revelation. The deficiency is that it hasn't transformed the environment. It's only there so long as it's there. The other way around, Mamata Lamaila, right? If you actually truly transform the Tachtain, the environment, so you're sort of, now what are you doing? You are taking it away from its original environment. It's not the low one any longer. You've lifted it into something higher. You've turned them onto the higher level. The idea is the fusion of the two. When we say, what's the ultimate purpose of creation? God desires to have a dwelling place in the lower domain, the lowest domain. What does that mean? It needs to remain a tachten. The chokhmah is not to take Asiya and turn it into Atzilus. The idea is that Asiya should remain Asiya. The lowest level should remain the lowest level. And in the confines of the lowest level, the highest level of godliness should be able to exist and be present there in a very comfortable way. That's fusion. Right? It's a bit of a difficult notion to grasp, because that's what Mashiach, that's the idea of Mashiach. Basically, you're doing the impossible. In other words, just like Bria is impossible, when we say creating something from nothing, so to speak, right? Yesh me'ayin. How does that work? We don't know how it works, because it's the domain of the Creator, right? Mashiach is the actualization of that in a revealed and permanent way, where you take the very highest levels, and the highest levels remains in its state. You take the very lowest levels and it remains in its state, and you fuse the two. That's the idea of, that's why the Rebbe says that these two opinions are really and truly, they're not contradicting each other, they're actually two sides of the same coin. There is the hamshacha of Atzilus into Biyah, the higher one into the lower one, and then there's the lifting of the lower one into the higher one. You need both. And it's just that the Zohar and the Arizal are each emphasizing a different aspect of the process. But really and truly, you need, both of them are true.
Those examples are very good, but I don't see how they connect with the das above and below. Are you saying that above and below is always das, connected with das?
You're talking about das from the previous Maimon?
No, today. You earlier said you used to refer to das above and below.
Where did we refer to das? No.
Well, that's what
No, I was referring. It says das. He was talking about the opinion of the Arizal. Das over here he was referring to in terms of opinion rather than the Sfira. There is the opinion of the Arizal and there is the opinion of the Zohar. The opinion of the Arizal is that the splitting of the sea is the idea of the connection between breaking the barrier between Atzilus and Biyah, the creator and the created. In that process, there are two opinions. How that works. One opinion is, good morning. One opinion is that you take the higher one and you bring him down to the lower one. You're bringing heaven down to earth. You're bringing Atzilus down to Biyah. And the other opinion is that you're lifting the lower one up to the higher one. So when you say that both of them hold true, in essence, what is being said is that the higher realm remains in its state as it is on high. The lower realm remains in its state as it is below, and the two of them combine. That's the idea, right? Because when you're bringing Atzilus down to Biyah, you can bring Atzilus down to Biyah. As we know, say the Shtalshlus, there's a diluted way of bringing Atzilus down to Biyah, right? Atzilus in the normal way of Seder Shtashlis, in the order of descent. But what happens? It's not really Atzilus. You've turned it into Biyah. If it remains in a state of Atzilus, it overwhelms the one below, right? So, but what's the idea of the splitting of the sea, taking away the chasm? The Elyon remains an Elyon, the Tachten remains a Tachten, and you fuse the two. Right? So this is the idea. We'll elaborate, please God, Mitzvah more about this tomorrow. The idea of
an example of the fusing of the two.
a mitzvah. Today, it's the idea of a mitzvah. The mitzvahs as we know it. Our forefathers performed mitzvahs, but so they accomplished whatever they accomplished spiritually. The effect on the physical object was temporary, because there was no fusion. Because inherently, Atzilus and Biyah are not fusible. The creator and created, without this breaking of the chasm, they live in two different worlds. They can't combine. So it needs a power greater than the two, as we learned also in the previous Mamar. It means the revelation of the very essence. That's what the point that I was making over here. That you need the revelation from the very inner dimensions of Keser, which ultimately goes to the very essence of Hashem, in order to be able to accomplish this process. And that's the idea of Mashiach. So the process, in a certain sense, started at Matan Torah. That's when it began. The breaking of this chasm, this inherent chasm. And the culmination of that will be when Mashiach comes. And this is the idea behind the splitting of the sea. The sea refers to that which is concealed. Sea covers everything. So in the celestial levels, what are we talking about? Either Malchus of Atzilus, of the realm of Atzilus, covers up on everything that's in Atzilus, right? Beyond that, we're talking about Keser, the level of the crown. Malchus of Atzilus is the intermediary between Atzilus and Biyah, the domain of the creator and the domain of the created in worlds, in the context of the four worlds. Keser, the crown, is the intermediary between what's beyond Keser and Atzilus. And before the Tzimtzum, before the first contraction, you have Malchus the Ein Sof, the level of Malchus of God's infinite light, which is again the intermediary between God's very essence, that which is before the Tzimtzum, before the contraction and after the contraction. And the idea of the splitting of the sea is that it split all these levels, meaning to say, the fusion of the higher realms and the lower realms. So just like when it came to Matan Torah, we had to fuse two worlds which are otherwise in completely separate environments, in order to be able to transform Gashmis into a permanent state. So you needed the splitting of the sea, which means the revelation, the opening up, the breaking the barrier between the higher level, the higher realm, and the lower realm. So too, when it will come to Matan Torah, when Mashiach will come, when it's the culmination of that process, we also need a splitting of a sea, again to signify this idea of the opening up of the barrier between the domain of the creator and the domain of the created, from the highest levels all the way through to the lowest levels. This is in a nutshell what the Rebbe is saying over here. We'll flesh it out, please God, more tomorrow.